My sister forced me to pay for her $58,000 wedding through family blackmail. But when I refused to be her ATM for life, she sued me. And the judge destroyed her in court, exposing her fraud. Now I live in my house while they got evicted. I'm 30 years old, I work in finance, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened with my family basically forced me to cut off all contact with them. And even though I know I did the right thing, there are still days when I question if I was too harsh. I guess I should start by explaining how we got to this point, because it's not like I suddenly decided I didn't want a family anymore, you know? It was a long and exhausting process that culminated with my younger sister literally suing me in civil court. Yes, you read that right. She sued me. But let's go step by step. My sister, Stephanie, was always the golden child of the family. Like since we were kids, everyone knew it. She's 26 now, so like 4 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, my parents treated her like she was made of glass or something. I was the responsible son, the one who got good grades, the one who helped around the house, the one who never caused problems. But Stephanie was the princess who could do whatever she wanted without consequences. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate her or anything. She was my sister, and I loved her. But there was definitely favoritism there. It was obvious to anyone who saw us interact as a family. While I was working part-time since I was 16 to pay for my stuff, Stephanie got money every time she asked for it. My parents bought her everything she wanted. They bought her a car when she turned 18. They paid for her entire college while I had to take out student loans that I'm still paying. You know what I mean? It was frustrating, but I thought, well, that's how things are in this family. I'm the oldest and I'm supposed to be more independent. The thing is that when I finished college, I got a really good job at an investment firm, and let's say I've done pretty well financially. I'm not a millionaire or anything crazy, but I make a comfortable 6-figure salary, and I've been disciplined with my savings since forever. I live in a modest apartment. I drive a 2015 car that I already paid off completely, and basically, I've been smart with my money. Stephanie, on the other hand, studied something related to graphic design, but never really worked in that. She jumped from one retail job to another, lived with my parents without paying rent, and spent all her paycheck on clothes, going out, and trips. My parents never demanded anything from her, never told her, hey, you need to be more responsible or start saving, none of that. Like 3 years ago, Stephanie met Cameron somewhere, I think at a bar or a dating app, and they fell in love super fast. Like within 2 months, they were already living together. Cameron is a guy who's basically the male version of Stephanie, irresponsible with money, no real ambitions, hopped from job to job every 6 months, but my parents adored him because he made Stephanie laugh and that was enough for them. I tried to be the cool older brother and accept him. We'd go out sometimes for beers, and he seemed like a good guy. Although from the beginning I noticed that whenever we went out, he never had money or expected me to pay. But whatever, I didn't give it much importance at the time. Everything started going to hell about 2 years ago when Cameron proposed to Stephanie. She was super excited, posting pictures of the ring on Instagram every 2 seconds, already planning this giant, elaborate wedding. And I was happy for her. I really was. Like a week after they got engaged, my mom called me on a Sunday afternoon and said she needed to talk to me about something important. I went to my parents' house thinking maybe someone was sick or something serious. But no. My mom sits me down in the living room and tells me, William, your sister is planning her wedding and you know how your father's and my financial situation is. We've had some medical expenses lately and we can't help her as much as we'd like. And you're her older brother. And I know you have a good job. So we're hoping you could contribute a little to help with some wedding costs. At that moment I thought, okay, maybe they're asking me for like $2,000 or $3,000 to help with something specific. That didn't seem that crazy to me. After all, it was my sister's wedding. I asked them how much they needed, and my mom got all uncomfortable and said, well, we don't know exactly yet, but anything you can help with would be wonderful. We'd really appreciate your support on this. I told her sure, to let Stephanie tell me what she needed, and we'd see what I could do. My mom hugged me and told me I was the best son in the world, that Stephanie was going to be so grateful, and I left there feeling good, like I was doing the right thing as an older brother. 2 days later, Stephanie called me all excited, saying that Mom had told her I was going to help with the wedding and that she had a list of things. A list? Can you believe it? She sent me a message with like 15 different things, from the venue that cost $15,000, the catering for 200 people that was like $12,000, her dress that cost $3,500, the bridesmaids' dresses, the flowers, the photographer, the videographer, the live band she wanted that cost another $5,000, decorations, the cake, literally everything. When I saw those numbers, I was shocked. Like I was expecting her to ask me for help with one or two small things, not to finance the entire damn wedding. I called her and told her, Stephanie, this is a lot of money. We're talking about like $50,000 total. I can't pay for all this. She got super defensive and told me she thought I wanted to support her, that I was her only sister and she was only going to get married once in her life, that Mom had told her I had a lot of money saved up, and that this wouldn't be a problem for me. I tried to explain that yes, I had savings, but they were for my future, to eventually buy a house, for emergencies, for my retirement. But she started crying and told me she never thought her own brother would be so selfish, that she had always been there for me. Which was a lie. By the way, Stephanie had never really done anything for me. And that if I didn't help her, she'd have to have a super small and simple wedding, and all her friends were going to think she came from a poor family. I hung up, feeling like garbage. Then, my mom called me crying, saying I had made Stephanie cry. How could I be so insensitive, that this was an opportunity to show my sister how much I loved her? My dad also called me, which he almost never did, and gave me a speech about the importance of family and being there for your sister in important moments. They basically made me feel like the worst person in the world for not wanting to empty my savings on a wedding that I knew was going to be excessive and probably full of unnecessary things. In the end, I gave in. Because I'm an idiot, I guess. I told them I'd pay for the wedding, but that I had a limit of $50,000 and they'd have to stick to that budget. Stephanie was euphoric. My parents told me they were very proud of me, and I felt like a good brother, even though inside I was terrified of spending so much money. During the next 8 months, I basically financed every aspect of that wedding. Stephanie came every week with new expenses, things that weren't on the original list. Like she decided she wanted a premium open bar instead of a regular one, which added another $3,000, or that she wanted fireworks at the end of the reception, another $2,000, or that the invitations she had chosen weren't elegant enough and she needed more expensive personalized ones. Every time I told her we had already exceeded the budget, she cried, or my parents called me saying not to ruin this special day for her by being stingy with a few extra dollars. The wedding finally came, and honestly, it was beautiful. I'm not going to lie. The venue was gorgeous, the food was amazing, the band was really good. Stephanie looked radiant in her expensive dress, and everyone had a great time. During the reception, Stephanie gave me a hug in front of everyone and said into the microphone that none of this would have been possible without her incredible older brother, who had made all this a reality for her, and everyone applauded and looked at me like I was a hero. In that moment, I felt good. I thought, okay, it was worth it. I made my sister happy on the most important day of her life. The $50,000 was an investment in our relationship as siblings. But that feeling lasted like 2 weeks. A month after the wedding, Stephanie called me and told me that she and Cameron were having trouble paying the rent on their apartment because they had spent all their money on the honeymoon they went on to Bora Bora, which, by the way, I had also given them $3,000 as an additional wedding gift and asked me if I could lend them $1,500 to cover that month's rent. I told her I had just spent $50,000 on her wedding and I needed to rebuild my savings, and she told me it was just a loan, that they'd pay me back the next month. I transferred the money because I thought, well, she's my sister. She's having a temporary emergency. That's what family does. The next month, they didn't pay me. In fact, they asked me for money again, this time to cover Cameron's car payment because he had lost his job again. And then it was for a medical bill for Stephanie, and then for car repairs, and then for I don't know what else. During the next 6 months, I probably gave her another $8,000 total, always with the promise that they were going to pay me back, but they never did. Every time I asked them about the money they owed me, they had an excuse. Cameron is still looking for a good job. We have a lot of expenses. We'll pay you back soon. Give it time. Things reached a breaking point like 6 months ago. We were all at a family dinner at my parents' house. It was my mom's birthday, I think, and Stephanie casually mentioned during dinner that she and Cameron were looking at houses to buy. My dad asked her how they were going to do that if they could barely pay the rent on an apartment, and Stephanie laughed and looked at me and said, "Well, we figured William could help us with the down payment. He already helped us with the wedding, which was incredible. I'm sure he'll want to help us get our first house too, right, William?" Everyone just stared at me, waiting for me to say yes, and something in me just broke in that moment. I put my fork down on the table and told Stephanie, "No, I'm not going to help you with the down payment on a house. I already spent over $50,000 on your wedding, and I've lent you thousands of additional dollars that you've never paid me back. I have no more money to give you." The atmosphere at the table got super tense. My mom was looking at me with that face like, "I can't believe you're saying this." And Stephanie just sat there with her mouth open like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then, Stephanie exploded. She started yelling at me that I was selfish, that I was bitter, that I was probably jealous that she was married and happy while I was alone and miserable. She called me a loser who didn't know what love or family was, said I'd regret treating her like this, that she had always known I was a shit brother who only cared about money. I just sat there in shock, waiting for my parents to say something, to stop her, to defend me even a little, but they didn't. My mom just said softly, "William, I think you're being very hard on your sister. She's just asking for help." And my dad nodded and said, "That's true. Family helps each other. I don't understand why you're acting like this." I got up from the table, grabbed my keys and my jacket, and told them, "You know what? I'm sick of this. I've been the only one in this family who has given and given without receiving anything in return. And the only thing I get is being treated like an ATM. So, I'm ending this right now. Don't ask me for money ever again, any of you." Stephanie yelled something as I left, but I didn't hear what. I walked out of the house and drove to my apartment, feeling a mixture of liberated and devastated at the same time. The next few days were horrible. My mom called me every day, leaving voicemails crying, saying I had ruined her birthday, that I had disrespected Stephanie, that I needed to apologize. Stephanie sent me like 50 text messages saying everything to me, that I was a bad brother, that she hoped I was happy being miserable and alone all my life, that I had never really loved her. Cameron also sent me messages defending Stephanie and telling me it was pathetic that I was denying help to my own sister. My dad sent me a long, formal email explaining why he was disappointed in me and how he had raised me. I blocked everyone temporarily because I couldn't deal with that. I needed space to process everything. Like 2 weeks later, a mutual friend of Stephanie's and mine, Heather, called me and said she needed to tell me something. Turns out Stephanie had been talking badly about me with all our mutual acquaintances, saying I was a miser who had promised to help her with a house and then backed out just to hurt her, that I was jealous of her happiness, that I had always been a terrible brother who hated her. Heather told me she knew that wasn't true because she knew the real situation, but she thought I should know that Stephanie was basically trying to destroy my reputation with anyone who would listen. That hurt more than I expected. I'm not going to lie. But what happened next was even worse. Like 3 weeks after the dinner, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Stephanie and Cameron's landlord. He told me that Stephanie had stopped paying rent 2 months ago, and that when he confronted her, she told him that her brother, meaning me, had agreed to take care of the rent for them while they saved for a house, and gave him my phone number and my information saying I would pay everything they owed. The landlord told me they owed $4,500, including late fees, and that I needed to pay immediately, or he was going to start the eviction process. I told the landlord I had no agreement with Stephanie, that she was lying, that I wasn't going to pay anything, and to do whatever he had to do legally. I felt bad for the landlord because he was just a guy trying to get payment for his property, but it wasn't my responsibility to pay my adult sister's rent. I hung up and sent Stephanie a message, telling her that her landlord had called me, and asking her how she dared to use my name and promise my money without my permission. She responded with a super casual message saying, "I thought you'd understand it was just temporary until we got settled. It doesn't have to be a big deal. Just help us this once and after that we'll manage on our own." I didn't respond. 2 weeks later, Stephanie started a GoFundMe for their house down payment. The description was all dramatic, saying, They were a young couple trying to fulfill the American dream of owning their own home, but they had had financial problems due to circumstances beyond their control, and that any help would be appreciated. She set a goal of $30,000. I saw that she shared the link like 500 times on Facebook and asked all her friends to share it too. When I checked like a week later, she had raised $75, literally $75 from like 3 people. That gave me a bit of malicious satisfaction. I'm not going to lie. Seeing that basically no one was willing to give her money for a house when she had just had a $50,000 wedding. But then something happened that I honestly didn't see coming. Like 2 months after all that, I received an official court notification. Stephanie was suing me for $60,000, alleging that I had violated a verbal agreement of continued financial support and that I had caused emotional and financial harm to her and her marriage by suddenly withdrawing that support without notice. When I say I was shocked, that's an understatement. Like I couldn't believe my own sister was literally suing me. The lawsuit included some texts that were supposedly from me promising continued financial support, but they were clearly edited or straight up fabricated because I had never said that. I had to hire a lawyer, which cost me another $5,000, and prepare my defense. My lawyer told me it was a ridiculous lawsuit without legal merit, that verbal agreements of this type were practically impossible to prove, and that the texts she had presented as evidence were obviously false or taken out of context. But still, we had to go to court, waste time, go through all that stress. During this time, my family was completely on Stephanie's side. My mom called me crying, asking why I was being so cruel to my sister, how I dared to fight this in court instead of just paying her what I owed her. My dad sent me another email telling me this was my chance to do the right thing and settle this out of court before it went too far. The hearing day came like 4 months later. Stephanie showed up with Cameron, both dressed like they were going to a job interview, her crying dramatically when she had to give her testimony about how I had destroyed their lives by denying them financial support after promising to be there for them always. When it was my turn to present evidence, my lawyer showed all the receipts and bank transfers, proving I had already given her over $58,000 total between the wedding and the loans she never paid back, showed the actual unedited texts where she asked me for money repeatedly, without any mention of agreements or promises on my part, and basically dismantled her entire story. The judge was like 10 minutes reviewing everything, and then basically told Stephanie that her case was frivolous, that there was no legally binding agreement, that it was clear I had been extremely generous with her voluntarily, but that didn't create any legal obligation to continue giving her money indefinitely, and that presenting falsified evidence to the court was a very serious matter. He dismissed the case completely and ordered Stephanie to pay a fine of $1,500 for wasting the court's time with a baseless case. Stephanie exploded right there in court, yelling at the judge that this was unfair, that I was her brother and I had a responsibility to help her, that the whole system was against her because I had money for a better lawyer. The bailiff had to escort Stephanie out of the courtroom because she wouldn't shut up. I left the courthouse feeling vindicated but also completely emotionally exhausted. Like 2 days later, my parents called me. I thought maybe they were finally going to apologize, admit that Stephanie had gone too far. But no. My mom was crying, saying Stephanie was devastated, that they didn't have money to pay the fine the judge had imposed on her, and that they had also just found out that Stephanie had been using their credit cards without permission and had maxed them out. They owed like $15,000 that they couldn't pay. My dad asked me if I could help them pay off Stephanie's debts because they were old and couldn't work enough to pay all that, and because at the end of the day she was my sister and we had to support her as a family. I told them no. I told them it wasn't my responsibility to pay for Stephanie's irresponsible decisions, that I had done more than enough, that they had allowed and encouraged her behavior for years, and now they had to deal with the consequences. My mom told me she couldn't believe I was turning my back on them in their time of need. What kind of son does that? I told her the same kind of son who was sued by his own sister for not giving her enough money. I hung up and blocked them too on my phone. The following weeks, I tried to continue with my normal life, but I'm not going to lie, I felt like garbage. I had essentially lost my entire family, but at the same time I felt lighter, like I had taken a huge weight off my shoulders. I didn't have to worry anymore about the next call asking for money, I didn't have to feel guilty about saying no. I didn't have to deal with constant drama. My friends supported me a lot during this time. They told me I had done the right thing, that my family had been using me, that I deserved better. Like 3 months after all that, Stephanie called me from an unknown number. I answered without thinking, because I didn't recognize the number. Her voice sounded different, like softer, less aggressive. She told me she had been in therapy, that she had been reflecting on everything that happened, that she realized she had been unfair to me, that she regretted suing me, that she understood if I could never forgive her, but she just wanted me to know she was sorry, and for a second I almost believed her. I almost felt bad for her, but then she said, "And I know we'll probably never be like before. But Cameron and I are really in a tough situation right now. They're going to evict us next week and we have nowhere to go. And I know it's a lot to ask after everything, but if you could help us just one last time with the first month's rent in a new, cheaper place, it would be a fresh start for all of us." I hung up without saying a word. I blocked that number too. And in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. These people were never going to change. They were never going to stop seeing me as a resource to exploit instead of as a person who deserved respect. That was like 6 months ago. Since then, I've rebuilt my savings. I literally just closed on my first house last week, a house I was able to buy by myself without having to worry about financing anyone else's fantasies. I changed my phone number. I moved to a different neighborhood, basically started over. Some distant relatives have contacted me asking what happened with the family, and I just tell them we had irreconcilable differences and leave it at that. I have no contact with any of them, and honestly, my life is much more peaceful now. I don't have to walk on eggshells. I don't have to feel guilty all the time. I don't have to worry about being used. Sometimes I wonder how they're doing. If Stephanie finally got her house, if my parents are still angry with me. But then I remember everything that happened, and it passes. I did what I had to do to protect myself and my future, and if that makes me the villain of the story in their minds, I guess I can live with that.